Yeni açtım. Anlaşıldı.
Sen de oradasın. Herkes geldi mi? Yes.
Yeah.
Good evening, dear friends. Since 1971, many of them were not born, of course. Romi KHOSLA and me, our paths did not cross, but we ran parallel, but not in race. And he is one of the top 5 architects, or even 4, I think, I may even say 3 top architects of India. His commitment and mission is both on social aspects of architecture and planning and restoration and conservation, but at the same time he is one of the leading talents of contemporary architecture in India and worldwide. And among many other things, he did not mention the CV, but he has many awards. But most recently, the day before yesterday, he won the Türkkuyusu Cad Award in Antalya. So, basically, I stole him from Antalya. I said, okay, he's here, I don't let him go and give us a car, and I take him to Bodrum. They said, okay, perfect. So we must thank Antalya Kepez municipality for that. And on the way, I made a point of allowing him or introducing to Aphrodisias. And we all were, we both actually were shaken with excitement. The best thing was that we were the only 2 visitors, and Romi thought that I closed the whole site for him. Here he is.
Thank you. It's a great privilege for me to speak to the elite of Bodrum, to be able to share some of my thinking with you. I'm going to speak today about how architecture gets created. It is the creation of architecture is not so simple as just getting a person and asking him what you want and making it build. So it's my story of how I created architecture. Now, before you is my life has been the realizing that my education, I was overgraduated. I had 2 or 3 degrees and all that. It was all rubbish. Whatever I learned was rubbish. So I have spent my life relearning. So this is a journey for you about how I relearned it and what was the rubbish that was filling my mind when I was graduating. And you see, our education is designed to make us come to conclusions, to find solutions, to come to the end of a thinking process. In real life, there is no conclusion. There is no end. So I begin in 1971, where I did, my thesis is being presented, at which Suha was present. And my thesis was the last city on earth, ultimate city. And all these drawings that you see here were spread on the wall, and my tutor, who's Peter Cook, is pointing, and the jury is asking me, what is your conclusion? What is the future city of so is that the next one? So I said this is the future city. On the left hand side is the decaying, failing heart of the urban civilization, and up in the air are the flying people. A new civilization is going to be born. Of course, like all good people, at a young age I was a communist, and this was the dying heart was the last communist city of the world, and coffee was thrown at the drawings. I still remember. Since then, I have lived a life refusing to believe in any ideals. What matters to me is to push the imagination beyond the present. Is not to find solutions. There are no solutions, let me assure you. I do not understand why we have to chase progress. I do not understand why we have to find the final solution, why we have to become more sophisticated. It's a huge waste of a lifetime. So, I spend my time, if you imagine, jumping from one stone to another stone, collecting what has my education dispersed, collecting it back into making me as a whole. So I thank you for inviting me, for allowing me to share my experiences, because for the first time today, I'm going to share with you my dynamic whole view of the world, which is the deeper side of architecture. When you're an architect, when you're any creative person, there is a flow of force going through your body. That's what makes you create, not your head and the ideas and the education. So the more that you put of your education and your history and your books, the more filters you make, the less creative you are. So the search was for this. So for architecture, what we do as architects is we bring architecture into existence. We don't design architecture. We don't make architecture. We make architecture come into existence. Actually, it's something that has a life of its own. So it has to be done very, very carefully. And let me talk about this current that flows through one in the creative process. It has 3 doors in it, 3 moving doors. And I'm going to take you through these 3 separate doors in my life. All right. The first one is the door that goes into my studio, which is the present. Here is a model. I'll return to these. I'm just going to give you a glimpse of what are the 3 doors. The first door is the door which leads into my studio, where there's a soft pencil and there's a tracing and you create buildings. The second door is the door which has books in it. It has magazines and books in it. So this is the place where you read what other people are trying to put in, other people are trying to explain to you. And these two books are books of mine, which I wrote in the realm, in the place where there are books to read, and there are words to express yourself, which is different from architecture. And then there's a third door. The third door, that leads into the future. That is the space between the earth and the sky. And although I wrote a book, it's a very lonely place, because that is where you actually create. And how do you search for that space in which your education has been left behind and you yourself are alone? So this process, here am I standing in the mountains, living in a tent in a cave up in the Tibetan plateau. So this was my search. Now I go back now to my studio, and I'm going to show you 3 projects which I'm doing, which I did at the same time. All right. The first of these is the restoration of a 1,000-year-old temple. It's a mud structure. Nobody knew how to restore it. Its roof was collapsing. It's a place about 4,500 meters on the Tibetan border. Very difficult to get to. So it was part of my search. What is it that composes architecture? And inside it, here is one of the wall paintings inside, which we were also engaged in restoring. But imagine that I went to this place to look at the roof that had collapsed, and the central image inside the temple was this figure. And this figure is the figure of wisdom. We call it Prajnaparamita. This is a representation of the perfection of wisdom. So I said, my God, this is extraordinary that I should be looking at this and restoring this. At the same time, I was rushing back and dealing with a corporate building, the headquarters of Volvo. And these were the studies that I made. The model is the floors in plastic and an unusual structural solution, and how to deal with the joins. So you sit and you craft a building in steel as you would craft a building in wood, because this is how I work. What is it? Modern? Is it ancient? It is not of consequence to me, because these three projects which I'm going to show you are going on at the same time in my mind. Is what I call the simultaneity of design. This is the building that eventually got designed. In the central staircase, which is suspended from cables, and the outside building, which has got louvers and keeps the sun. They are calculated with the computer, and it keeps the sun away. And this is a platinum building, so it uses its own energy and its own water, and everything is self-sufficient. This is the first commercial steel building to go up in India. It's a very high standards, but difficult to craft. And this is a typical view of what the interior would look like. So I am spending some 2 months in the mountains to restore a temple, and I come back and I have to deal with this. Because if I am not trying to create a style, I'm not trying to create how I am in the globe. I have only to see that what is flowing through me to create a building, to create a solution. Always to create a solution. So this is a reflection of that. The second project that I want to show you is a house that I just have finished in the mountains where I stay. And that is based on, it is called the Flying House. It's a delicate house in wood and brick structure with material which is carried up by craftsmen to the house site and is built together. There's no road to it. And here one is looking at an idea. When I first did the drawing, and it's got a flying roof made out of just local material, as you can see. And this is its location in the mountain, with this just kind of arising out of the site. Flying, maybe arrive there by flying, or maybe taking off to go somewhere. And this was making the architecture dynamic and only made in wood and stone, this building. At the same time that I was also dealing with the steel building. When you design, you have to listen. You know, like when you're getting unhealthy, you listen to your body, right? So it's the same with architecture. When you're designing, you have to listen. So that's a process. That's a difficult process. Any person, any of you creative people will have this moment that you want to listen. This house came out of that process of listening, of going to the site and imagining that you have a house that can just arrive out of nowhere and just be there as if it's been there forever. So this was part of that. So I'm going to, I move to the second door. The first door, as I said, is of the present, of the studio. The second door is the door in the world of books and notes and speeches and history. I'm not religious. I'm unable to worship any god. I'm uncomfortable with gatherings in places of worship. I believe in the irrational, crazy side of life. Anything that is mad and crazy has a very strong attraction for me. I avoid places that give answers. Anybody who has an answer for me, I'm interested. Because problems are set by other people, and you spend your life solving them for other people, right? So this is an interior view of that house, just to show you what it's like. It's up in the mountains. The sun has to come into the rooms. And now I come to the world of history, and I'm an admirer of Tolstoy. Tolstoy is a Russian author who pointed out that historians answer questions nobody has asked. So I look at the history of the way society develops, right? And let me tell you a story about my wife. One early morning, my wife shook me awake, exclaiming, "I have been lied to. I have been told lies all my life. All those people who have taught me these ideas I believed in have lied to me." So let me explain the background for this. Many years ago, my wife had arrived in Moscow to do her doctorate, a PhD, and she had spent many years of her childhood with her parents, who were at the same time staunch Indian left-wing people. The biggest lie, it turned out, for her at that time was one that made her believe in the Soviet Union. She was brought up in the Soviet Union. She believed in the Soviet Union. May Day Parade was a great moment of triumph for her. And the real trouble started when this happened, the perestroika happened. Because all the archives of the Russians were opened up. And she went into the archives and she found this letter. Of course, it had been found already, written by Lenin. Because let's imagine that she's educated with a great sense of belief in the socialist ideal, in the way the Soviet Union was able to achieve so much in so little time. And then she came across this secret letter written by Lenin to the Politburo in March 1922. And it was during the, March 22 was during the severe famine of the war, civil war. At that time, the church was doing humanitarian work, the Orthodox Church of Russia. And Lenin wrote in this secret letter, which is now a public document, he said, now, Lenin said, now, and only now, when there is famine, people are eating each other, when there are hundreds, if not thousands of dead bodies lying by the roadside, we must confiscate the property of the church. Now, this came as a shock to her because there was a great belief in Lenin, and to think that he had then started the Gulag. So she felt very much that history had told her the wrong information. And then she went on and did her research into modern art, the history of modern art. And there she found that the whole history of modern art is lies. Now you imagine what a shock it is, right? And let me show you. She looked at Gauguin. You are familiar with the work of Gauguin.
Yes.
What she maintained, what she found in her research was that actually the modern art movement, the entire modern art movement in Russia, in Holland, in Germany, was a reaction against the revolution, against the war. They were all looking east. They were enamored of the east. What she found when she started looking is, for instance, let me give you this two paintings of Gauguin and the strange hand posture that both the women have. And the reason for it is that they have, it has come from the hand gesture, which means fearlessness. Abhaya is a fearless gesture in Buddhist paintings. And Gauguin, who became a theosophist and a Buddhist, had taken in his painting. Now, these paintings, she found, were not being shown in the history of Gauguin's architecture. Gauguin was represented as some decayed person who went to Tahiti and died from some diseases and all that. It's all wrong, completely wrong. Then she went and she looked at Van Gogh. Van Gogh used to trace Japanese drawing, paintings, and then make his own paintings. And there are, in his letters to Theo, because now they are public, you know, he called himself a monk, completely engulfed by the Eastern philosophies of life. And this is a tracing paper from the painting that he created. Malevich was the great abstract painter who put forward the black square, and this is from, my wife got this from the museum in Moscow. This is a black square, which says here mandala. And the squares of the circle and the dot and the square, which come from the Indian drawings. And these were all buried in his notes. And of course, we saw this as the painting. The black square, which became the ultimate abstraction for Malevich. And actually, Malevich was, unfortunately, put by the Soviet system into a gulag. And when he came out of the gulag, in St. Petersburg, the Mongolians had set up a Tibetan temple where Tibetan monks were treating. He went there for his treatment till he died. He said, I do not trust the system at all. He said, the problem is that the history is written to make something else out of it. They don't tell you the whole story and the human suffering and the reasons for it. And here is a photograph of Claude Debussy and Satie taken by Stravinsky. And there's a big statue of Buddha right in the middle of them meeting. Right? And you know the Stil, as you know, that the Stil movement also has got very strong links with Shiva Shakti. So what I found with architecture, what I found she found with painting, etc., was that whatever we have been taught, we have to unlearn it. Therefore, we cannot create a building if we have got all of these filters which are preventing us from taking us in directions we don't want to go. What is the real flow that we have going through us? We need to see that. And this is, let me tell you, this is of course some of you are familiar with it in my studies of architecture. For instance, Charles Darwin is a very favored person in the West. And if you see his original work, it says it is for the preservation of a favored races in the struggle for life. So this is the base of the superior building up of the European racial the conviction that the superiority exists. It's just in the mind. And if I look at Bannister Fletcher, of course some of you are familiar with it. It's a 700-page book, and Indian, Japanese, Saranic, Arabic, Syrian, Egyptian, Turkish, Indian, these are non-historical styles. They don't count. They are disposed of in less than 100 pages. So this, we are taught all this stuff. So this is part of the problem that I had. I also then encountered, I was living next to a person who was in the International Intelligence Service. And I said to him that I don't understand what's happening. And he then told me to read some different books. And when I read those books, then I pieced together the history of, I had been to a very elite university and I had been taught all kinds of things about how the world works, but none of it was telling me actually how it worked and how the secret societies were formed. These books, and I just read you out a will. Cecil Rhodes, you have to imagine, Cecil Rhodes was a bachelor. He started De Beers, he owned the diamond mines of South Africa. He died in 1902, but at the time of his death, he had billions of pounds and they all disappeared. Nobody knows where they went. They talk you about Rhodes scholarships and all that. In fact, it went into the Rothschild Bank. And the will, this paragraph appears in his will. He said we should form a secret society with one objective, the furtherance of the British people, for bringing of the whole uncivilized world under British rule, for the recovery and joining together of the United States, which is now happening because of Brexit, finally, For the making of the Anglo-Saxon race but one empire. And this dream, of course, came true because that fund was involved with with putting that together. Now, so with all this, my sanity, the fact that I stand here before you today could only have been assured because I went through the third door. The third door is the door into the future, the door which leads to a place where the pot of wisdom is boiling, where everything gets mixed into one. So the dream is always that if you create an architecture, the architecture has to come out of that. Nothing to do with the past, nothing that you are taught, but to be in touch with the flow as it goes through your system. And how this came about all my life, I would like to just explain to you. So there are two durations. There is when you go into the past, into the ancient past, this is the long duration. And when you see the present, this is the short duration. And I went into both. And this is in the middle of my architectural practice where I'm not able to understand. So to pursue that. And I went into the mountains, right? Deep into the mountains, looking for places where there is wisdom. You can see me standing, I'm the tallest guy there, living with the monks in one of those monasteries. I'm not a religious person. How do you gain wisdom? Then I went to China and I went to Udon. Some of you who have seen Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, will know the final scene where they go up and they fly. So I went there. I went there and I saw the incredible discipline with which the people were living there. It's a completely different life, but amazing qualities. I saw this happening. I met the monks there. I had long discussions. I went some time ago, and this is where I went to the present. I was in Kosovo, I was in Palestine, seeing what is happening in the present, how short knowledge is destructive and it cannot foster your creation. I went there to solve some of these problems, and I'll come to those to that later. This is what I saw. This is this is currently going on. So you see this whole from a distance. You see what destruction is being caused, what creative work is being done to come to some kind of Palestine. I was 9 months in Palestine, working with the Palestinian authorities in a very, very aggressive kind of way. Suha came and met me there also at that time. I want to just show you what this has resulted in. I'm going to put before you, I want you to be very calm and see these two very short videos. But they are what I summarize as being the direction of architecture, the direction of life, the direction of towns, the direction of cities. So let's see first the life of acrobats. The life, the pattern, the energy when somebody else decides what is to be done with you. Let me see. No, sorry, I'm going to go back on this. Yeah, okay. It doesn't seem to be working. What is it? So that we.
Did it ever work?
Yeah, it will test it. This is a beautiful world, full of security, but it's a look into the future. It's also a look into yourself, because what is it that we want to do? Do we want to live like acrobats, or can we look at the alternative? And normally these would be my last slides, but they are not. We will talk a little bit more after this. Here's the alternative. These are birds in the sky. We have a choice for us. The centralized system, we have seen it, and we have seen a distributed system. And I have been spending my last couple of years proposing that if we continue with a centralized system, we will come to an end. Because the logical conclusion of that is the acrobats that we saw. That's the society we are going towards. And in the context of India, where we have an autocratic regime, which we oppose, we don't oppose it politically. We say, create a distributed system. If you have architecture or urban planning, I say, don't create the centralized system. Create a distributed system, because there are two different worlds. One is the distributed world is the world of chaos and freedom. The centralized world is a world of acrobatics and listening to other people's ideas. This is how we put it together. And I'm going to imagine for you a system which is a distributed system. And I'm going to be very cheeky and bold and talk about Turkey. Here is a view of Turkey and the grump maps of Turkey. This is the settlement pattern of Turkey. And this I have just done this for Turkey because I did the exercise for India. The future lies in each of these settlements, each of these regions, each of the provinces in the lower map, which shows the settlements, being independent, being self-sustaining, creating their own foods, their own governance, and their own way of conducting their affairs. If we want to survive in the future, then the distributed system has to become a reality in the urban world. And my last slide is simply just how does it look? I was asked, what do you imagine as being a distributed urban system? And maybe something like this, where we have proposed in India, and I am proposing for you in Turkey, a distributed system where each region, each province has an ecological urban settlements that are fully self-sufficient in terms of food and energy and waste.
Yeah.
And this is the new urban civilization. But it starts from the birds. You have to have a belief that you want to lead that kind of life. You don't want to end up acrobating. And these points are coming very close now in the way the world is running. And we have to make, so as an architect, I will just come back that 50 years ago I was imagining a new urban civilization. I have not stopped dreaming about that. And the more mountains I have crossed, the more tents I have, caves I have lived in, I have become sure of myself that this is surely the choice that we have to make. We cannot go on living the urban life that we have, because 20, 30 years from now, these cities, these big cities like Delhi, Bombay, Istanbul, they are not going to be all together. They cannot be too expensive. So it's not a solution, but it's the end of my talk. I'm happy.
The break.
I'm happy to ask any questions.
Before questions, I have
Please.
couple of interventions.
How do you put 1 million, let's say, of Indians in a city like this?
This population is 1 million in this city which you have
Yes.
in front of you. Yeah.
Because Himalayas, yes, I understand. But in reality,
No, reality, yes, reality.
where do you stuff these people in an urban place like that?
This image has has a population of 1 million.
Oh,
You
the
cannot
rest,
exceed a million.
but the rest.
in
Where do
any
you
urban setting.
where do you stack the rest?
We have to create more. We have
Yeah.
to create.
Then you will have no more land.
No.
Of course we have land. We occupy 2% of our land with our settlements.
So I shall embellish his talk with a couple of anecdotes. These are all refer to our common lives. And one of them, that the person whom he calls as his wife, I call her as the Queen of India and the world, Kalpana Sahni. She's the daughter, she's a very important writer in his own right, but she's also the daughter of Bisham Sahni. And when we, in the Aga Khan Award, invited Romi to join us, and Romi went to his father-in-law, and Bisham told him that, look, when you go to Turkey, I'll arrange everything for you. Go and talk to Yaşar Kemal and Aziz Nesin, and that's Turkey. And he came totally sort of loaded with that. And we were working in Palestine. You know, it's not very easy. You know, you risk your life and everything. But neither Romi nor myself, we have no fear of life. You know, so we were there and staying in a place called American Colony, very ironically. And we went to Western Palestine. and it was Saturday. And I ordered beer, and we were drinking beer. We both were happy. And a radical or fundamental Jewish guy came to me and started that you are doing this on Saturday and whatever, you know. I said that, look, we are drinking the beer, but we didn't bring it, okay? Go and tell the shopkeeper. He said, okay, you are right. and disappeared. The third thing which was almost important, when they were, Romi showed that when they were sort of demolishing all the Lenin statues, I told the mayor of Tashkent, I said, look, some of them may have some artistic value, you know. Why don't you assess them? And then if they don't have any value, you can destroy. But you are really wiping out the whole legacy of artistry which went in there. He said, no, the mayor of Samarkand, sorry. And he said, what can be of good artistic value? I said, the statue of Maxim Gorky in front of the Samarkand theater. It was almost this high, almost a cube, but done in Brancusi style. It was Maxim Gorky, but also Brancusi, or the sculptor himself. I said, we have that one. Solid stone. And we worked there for a long time for Samarkand competition, Romi and myself and Kalpana, because she is totally conversant with Russian and Russian behavior and whatever. And sometime later I went there, the sculpture was not there. And I had access, I called the mayor, I said, look, what happened to the sculpture? I told you that it was very interesting, precious and whatever. He said, oh, Suhabe, we kept it for you, you can take it home. I wish I had the facility today, and I could have taken it and put it in the middle of Bodrum, you know. The last piece that I would like to share, in 1992, Romi came to Bodrum to criticize or assess or report on Turgut Cansever's Demir village. And we went all over the place. And this photograph is by him, me admiring the sea. He thinks that I'm peeing, but it's not true, actually it's true. And then I turned back, and we had these two things, and the whole framing and everything is by Romi himself, from Gümüşlük towards the harbor. So we are open to your questions. We have 5 or 10 minutes for the munchies. Romi, our appreciation, and thank you.
Thank you very much.
I would like to ask you, for whom did you build that house in the mountain that is flying off? Who was giving you that order without knowing what they would get?
Let me give you the news that it is for nobody.
Oh, good.
It is still standing there empty.
Oh, let's go there.
Because
Wonderful.
it was a passion that I said I have to build like this.
Yeah.
So we had some land, we built it. That's it. It's lying empty for 3 years now. But
Airbnb.
yeah, I know. Lots of business we can make with it. But we go and spend the night in it once in 3 years. No, it's lying empty because it was a very strong desire to let the flow go through and make something, which is full of. And the material is all from that place. The roof and everything is from the site, near 3 kilometers from the site.
And what material did you use?
We used mud bricks
Yes?
and wood And slate, we
Yes,
had a 2-kilometer range from which everything had to be taken.
yes,
So it was like and all the local craftsmen were trained by me to work and achieve that quality. It's difficult to have that quality, but we managed to do that. It's,
yeah, but everything's quality. It's the detail that counts.
it's the detail.
Yeah, okay.
You have to craft
Yeah,
the best architecture. What happens now in contemporary architecture is that many contractors take over the building,
yes,
right? So the architect has lost touch with the craft of with how to make your building yourself. And it's like I was showing you for the steel building, that you have to create, it doesn't matter what it is, however advanced that building is, you have to create it with your own sense of craftsmanship, because architecture is much closer to art and sculpture than it is to commerce.
absolutely.
Now, if you push architecture into commerce, then other people do it and they sell it off by square foot and they make money. But if you are closer to the art tradition, then you make the building in a craft. You create it, no matter what the scale is. And it is exactly what it is. You want to be an acrobat architect or you want to be a bird? So this is what I learned from.
Yeah, but the important architect, they are the birds.
Yes.
They are
Or
important
freedom,
architects.
the freedom and chaos,
Yeah.
or you can have a very sure security and no freedom, but you're an acrobat, you're told what to do, and you're told to produce something for somebody else. That's okay. That's also life. I mean, it's okay. I think it's.
But you know that those birds, in fact, it is not chaos at all. They don't touch each other, you know that.
It's not
They
chaos.
not
It's
at
a
all.
very
Not
beautiful,
2 millimeters.
self-regulated pattern.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's a bit okay. I'm making it a bit extreme, but basically, if you ask me, the pot of wisdom when I took from it, it taught me this. I don't want to do any acrobatics. I don't want to be an acrobat in my life.
Yeah.
How can I avoid it?
Yeah.
But any questions? Yeah. Sorry.
How's the quality of handcraft and skills in India? Stone,
Very
wood, and
It's very
steel.
good. It's very good.
I think so.
You see, India, we didn't have a revolution, we did not have a war, we did not have a civil war, we didn't kill everybody. Europe had a fantastic craft tradition before the First World War. They took them and put them in the trenches, and they got shot.
Yes.
They lost everybody. So they had no craft left. China has done the same. They have killed too many people. They don't have any craft anymore. So we have too many people, but we didn't kill them, at least. So we have a very rich tradition of craft. Everything is crafted. Textile, stone, wood, everything is possible to craft. And because of the number, it's not expensive. So it's possible.
And I think there must be a tradition behind this, because I was visiting in Ankara, the British Embassy.
Yes.
Built one of the first embassy in the after the Turkish Republic, and then it was really good craft. And then the ex ambassador told me the handcrafts come from India, which is interesting. I was very surprised about it.
You know, one of our sort of common friend, or one of our gurus in Charles Korea, once he said that, Suha, how can you be so optimistic? I said, Charles, it's very simple. You know, in the Western fairy tales, there is Hansel and Gretel, there are these getting lost in the forest and getting threaten their lives, and bad mother-in-law poisons the daughter and all these things. But in Turkey we have Keloğlan. You know, Keloğlan behaves in a way that he seduces the daughter of the Sultan.
Yeah.
And we have Nasreddin Hoca, he rides the donkey, he works, and he said that I have to see the back because the front is seen by the donkey, politicians. And, there's a lot of things to learn from the East and West, you know, and with this relationship between the subcontinent and further up, you know, and Romi is a part of it, you know, we always giggle about these things and make this optimism to last forever. So it is time for munchies, and Romi will be there. Okay?